10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
Game over.
Welcome to Game Over Montreal. As always, I'm Andrew Berkshire, and as always, the Canadiens have lost another game, but they made it to overtime. So, hey, incremental improvements. Tonight, I'm going to be joined by a good buddy of mine. It's Joey Alfieri, so I'm going to welcome him in right now. How's it going, man?
I'm good, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm enjoying being able to watch the games with no stress because, there's nothing that is to be expected this season now. It's fun. I mean, I think that as much as the Canadiens have lost 3 in a row now, the last one being in overtime, the last 4 games have been their best 4 games of the season. As odd as it is, I know they've had that crappy situation against the Golden Knights, and they kind of got blown out by the Islanders. But if you look at the actual way they've played, it's been the best 4 games of the year.
Yeah, I mean, sort of. Maybe like a 4-game stretch in a row. Because like early on in the season, they had a decent showing on opening night against Toronto. Like they've had some performances here and there, but man, if this is the best 4-game stretch of the season so far,
The bar's low.
That's a little bit of a problem. I was just gonna say.
I mean, they're now 3-10-1 in 14 games.
Yeah.
It's not a pretty situation, but the fact is, I mean, there's some incremental improvement. They're scoring 2 goals a game now instead of 1. Right?
You're so positive. You're so positive. But it's new, it's new ways to lose.
Yes.
Every night, right? Like every other night is a new way to lose. So I was curious to see tonight how they would bounce back after giving up the game tying goal in the second period, right? Because usually that's when the wheels fall off, and the wheels kind of did fall off in the second period. Like they were badly outchanced.
Yep.
But the 2 goals in regulation were terrible. Like Jake Allen has to stop those. They're from similar angles, and he's got to come up with the saves. But then he made like these unbelievable saves, like the one going to his left on Danault, and the rebound was Iafallo or whatever. Like, so he kept them in the game while taking them out of the game. And then I don't know, you anti-mushed Jake Evans too. I saw that on Twitter. Like you had something true to say about Jake Evans, but then he ended up coming back and silencing you, me, and everybody else who doubted.
Yeah, for anybody who missed it, it was like Jake Evans had 3 decent chances in the game, and I was like, if he just had 5% more talent, where he could just pull that puck a little bit around and put it in the net, he'd be amazing. And then, of course, he scores the goal of his career. Like, he's not going to score a prettier goal than that, right?
Absolutely
that was amazing.
Not. Yeah, and it's funny, like you said the 5% thing, and I was thinking it because you said it. I think you tweeted it right after he had the puck on the left side and he made that power move and got to the front of the net, but then missed the net.
Yes,
like he thinks the game really well. It's just what the mind wants to do and what his hands and ability can do are 2 very different things. But I was happy for him. It's been a tough start to the year for him too. They asked him, or they put him in a role he clearly isn't ready for, and I don't know if he's ever going to be ready for it. So the fact that he can flash that little bit of skill every once in a while helped him get a loser point tonight. I mean, it's going to be a nice little positive.
Yeah, it's better than nothing. Although I mean, at this point, the Canadiens, it's better to lose, right? Like to get a top end pick this year, I think should be the goal essentially. Do a little reset, let your young kids dominate in the AHL, figure it out for next year or 2 years down the line. Which is unfortunate for me, launching a new Montreal Canadiens-based show. But hey, that's what we're going to do. We're still going to have fun every night. And, I mean, I think there are a few positives to point out in this game. Like, even though they lost, 3-on-3 is a bit of a crapshoot. I thought they owned that 3-on-3 for the most part. Like, they really only gave up 2 chances. And the one of them, I can't believe they didn't call Jeff Petrie for when Iafallo got away from him and he just reached a free hand out and pulled his shoulder. It's one thing to let things go in the overtime, but when a guy has essentially a breakaway and you negate it by pulling their shoulder back, I was kind of shocked they didn't call that, but that's the officials in this league.
they're very hit or miss. And like you're right though, like even if we take it back, Andrew, to right before overtime, so Evans scores, and then they really took it to them. Like Hoffman had a chance from the low slot. Toffoli had a great look. Suzuki had the wraparound that he just couldn't tuck it to the inside of the post. They had the power play, which actually looked really, really good toward the end of the game. And then you had like the Dvorak chance in overtime on the 2-on-1. Like they had some looks. Like they could have easily come away with 2 points tonight.
Yeah, and I think what you hit on in your first little bit at the start of the stream was that you look for the Canadiens to start collapsing as soon as something goes wrong, and that second period, as soon as they allowed that one goal, they have that period where they feel sorry for themselves and they're like, oh, everything's gonna go wrong. The body language is terrible, and I hate reading the body language, but it's terrible, and they just like they sulk and they get beaten down, and LA was dominant in that period. They got 5 high danger scoring chances in the second period. The entire rest of the game at even strength, they got 2. So like the Canadiens outchanced them in high danger chances 14-7 in the game. So like let's give some credit to Cal Peterson, who held them in a little bit. I think he made some pretty dynamite saves. And I think we could argue about like how good the Canadiens are at converting on those chances. How many of those chances missed the net, right? But I think Cal Peterson had a really strong game. Jake Allen was good, but like you said, he gave up a couple weak ones, and that's kind of been the story for the last stretch here. He's been not necessarily awful, but beaten on a lot of beatable, like savable shots, we'll say.
Yeah, and look, I think you look at the 3 wins that they've had this year, and he's been their best player in those games, in like 2 of those 3 games by a mile. Right, there was in San Jose, I want to say, and then even in the Detroit game, the one they won 6-1, like he had some pretty big saves early on when the score was tight. So it's no coincidence that when he plays well, they win. And it's just, I hate talking about the goaltending because it's just like such an easy narrative, but in this case, like those shots need to be stopped. And I'll be honest with you, I thought the wheels were going to fall off again. 6 seconds is the fastest goal in Kings history to start a period, and I don't even know how you let that in, but they managed to hang in there. Tip of the cap to Brendan Lemieux. Did Brendan Lemieux wake up Brendan Gallagher, Andrew? Is that what we're going to call it? Is that how we see that?
It sure looked like it. I mean, that's kind of the risk of being an agitator, right? Is that sometimes you go a step too far and just really piss a team off and wake them up. Because it was a pretty stagnant period until that second call against Pezzetta, which I still think Pezzetta like probably feels like garbage right now, right? Because to get suckered by the same guy twice, like I mean, honestly, Lemieux should have been called for diving both times, but that's who he is. Right, so you got to figure that he's going to get away with one at some point, and he's going to draw you in. So just don't engage. Like, there's no point in engaging. But it sure looked like he woke up Gallagher. It's too bad that the power play couldn't get anything done for the Canadiens because Gallagher drew that call. I thought that was it. Right, when Deneau's off, he's their defensive specialist. You think this is the opportunity, but they just couldn't get it done. I understand like the tendency to favor puck control with guys on their strong sides, but with Hoffman and Suzuki on their strong sides, like there's no one-timer options on that power play, and to keep that unit out, they had good puck control that whole power play, but they weren't getting any good shots off.
Yeah. Well, first of all, I like that they called the timeout there because that second unit, and like woof, like the second unit, I like Petrie. Obviously, he hasn't been right, but just like if the answer is Armia and Chiarot on a power play unit, like no thank you. Like I'll call the timeout. So I like that they did that. But you're right. Like at one point Hoffman got a shot off, but I think he hit the side of the net, or Peterson like redirected with the blocker or whatever, but it wasn't going to hit the net anyway. But there's no threat for the one timer.
And that's like, I'm glad you mentioned that about the second unit power play, because I had actually written that down in my notes. I was like, I got to talk about this. Does any team in the league, and I know Chiarot scored tonight, and I actually thought today was maybe his best game of the whole year.
Dude, the guy has 3 goals, man.
Yeah, I know.
How many players on the team have more goals than this guy?
I know. That's the crazy thing. And you know what? We are going to talk about Chiarot in a positive way, which is a very rare thing for me. But to talk about this power play, no disrespect to the guy. I know he's red hot from the scoring perspective for a defenseman, but is there any team in the league whose second unit power play has guys who are less capable of scoring than Armia and Chiarot. Like, I like Armia. I have time for Armia, but he's a luxury fourth line guy. I know that he has a lot of skill, and you watch him in practice, and you're like, wow, this guy's Mario Lemieux. But his ability to translate his practice skills into game skills only shows up one every like 15 games. And that one game is fantastic. But the other games, you're just like, he's just a good fourth line guy who occasionally looks like a first liner, and he fools people into thinking that he can be like an elite scorer, and it's not going to happen. But even like at the end of the game there, after Evans scored his amazing goal, they threw Evans out on the power play as well, and it's like, I get it, but like, okay, that's a pretty weak power play, guys.
So you don't think Armia missed the net on the first goal, on the Chiarot goal on purpose? Like, you don't think he was trying to angle the puck off the? You think that was a fluke, though?
If any Montreal Canadiens player is missing the net on purpose at this point, they need to be put in the press box, because they're missing the net a hell of a lot.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I know on special teams it's been a bit of an adventure, and I'm all for experimenting on the power play, the penalty kill, and all that. But man, I at this point I would need for that first unit, and I kind of like Weidman. Like, I get it, they demoted Petrie to the second unit and they put Weidman, but on the power play, like, I feel like Weidman does make good decisions when it comes to distributing the puck. So I kind of get why they're experimenting here. But that second unit, like we said, it doesn't give you anything. Like, even at the end of the game, how long did they get on for? Like the last 25, 30 seconds. And they had the puck in the offensive zone, but it was like behind the net half the time. So yeah, I don't see it, but without Drouin, I get it. That's a big piece that's kind of missing on your power play. It's a skill guy that's not there.
Yeah, they're kind of up against the wall there, unfortunately, with the injuries that they have. And I would assume that even if Edmondson was healthy, he might take that spot on the power play just because of his familiarity with Petrie. I still think if they're healthy, I would rather see them run a 4-forward power play on both units. I think it just makes more sense. And once everybody's healthy, if they ever get healthy, I do think they have the forward depth to do that. They still need another center, though. Like, I like Jake Evans, and he scored an amazing goal tonight. I thought he had a really strong night overall. But I think he's a 4C, not a 3C.
He's a 4.
Yeah, like putting him outside of that slot just exposes him a lot more, and it makes him do things that are, not necessarily within the scope of his abilities, and he gets caught. And that didn't happen really tonight until, I don't know, can you even say he got caught on the overtime? He just got outplayed by Kempe, who's a better player.
Yeah, I don't know that you can. Yeah, he's definitely a better player, but I don't know that you can let the guy get to the outside that easily. And I won't pull it all on him, but that certainly wasn't a great look. But don't even worry, man. Puck gets out, so Adam Brooks come on down, 4 forwards on the power play. There you go.
Yeah, unfortunate for Paquette, because I thought that line was actually playing pretty well the last couple of games, right, with him between Pezzetta and Belzile, but. Unfortunate that he hasn't been able to find any consistency between, getting suspended and taking penalties. And it's been a rough start for Paquette for a few different reasons. But I thought if you watch what he's actually doing on the ice when he's not taking penalties, I've actually liked his game a little bit. He had some jam tonight. He created some turnovers in the offensive zone, but looked pretty rough, the injury there.
So random, though. Like, did you see that? Like, the injury, like, it was just so random. Like, he was like engaged, but it just, like, he kind of the knee twisted wrong and he skated off. It's not like it was contact. Like, I don't know that it was a non-contact injury, but he just kind of, I don't know, it looked weird. Like, I didn't even catch it in real time. Marty Esch showed the replay like a period later.
Yeah, it's just the limp as he was going to the bench, right? And never a fun thing to see. One thing I did notice during the game, though, and I know it's kind of tough right now because they're trying to figure out combinations that work with all the injuries that they have and, with Drouin out of the lineup. But that Dvorak, Anderson, Gallagher line, throw that into the fire, man. Like, I know Anderson's sick, but that line had nothing until the third period. They're the only line that got outplayed by the Kings tonight, and it just looked brutal. And I think there's a lot of good things to say about Dvorak so far this season. I think he's a decent two-way player, but offensively, just not very creative. I'm not seeing the spark there, that you want
Yeah.
out of a 2C, and I think it's a waste of Gallagher to put him on that line. If you're gonna get outplayed, like let him create some offense for Suzuki.
I don't think that those two mesh. Like Anderson, you can kind of just throw him out there with whoever. Doesn't really rely on line mates to set him up anyway. It's kind of just like when he's going, it's like put your head down, get to
Yep.
the net with your speed. But I don't know, like you can say whatever you want about Phil Deneau not being an offensive center, but Phil Deneau can play make better than Dvorak can. And I know what Dvorak did in Arizona. I know he played power play, even strength and penalty kill, and I know he produced offense a little bit more than Deneau did when he was in Montreal. But I don't know, man. Like it's different when you're in that prime time role in Arizona. It's different than coming here and being the microscope night in, night out. It's a totally different ball game. So I still don't know what he is. Like, if you go based on what he did in Arizona, yeah, he's a 2C. If you go based on what he's done so far in Montreal, I'll be honest with you, you say he's been okay. Like, I haven't been impressed at all through 14 games or whatever. And I know he's banged up. It was a game time decision tonight. I don't know how long he's been injured, but I certainly hope I hope there's more to give there, and I hope that he can find another level soon and find that comfort level because I don't think he hasn't been as advertised. I don't think he's delivered what they expected him to deliver.
No, not at all. I mean, I think that he's kind of the kind of player that a coach loves, right? Because he's like a comfortable slipper.
Safe,
He's going to win faceoffs. He's not bad defensively at all. Like, he does his job there. He's got some good skating ability, so he can join rushes, and like he doesn't take too many risks that create bad turnovers the other way around. So it's an easy guy for a coach to play, and I feel like that's part of the reason why the Canadiens valued him so highly. Is that's the kind of player that Marc Bergevin likes, right? There's very few players that they have acquired over the last several years that take a risk to make a play. I feel like Hoffman is really the only one this year. And he's working out all right. I like what he does in the power play. Even strength's been a bit of a adventure. He hasn't really found a home outside of that line where they had him with Gallagher and Suzuki, which I thought was really good. And clearly they feel like they can't keep them together while Drouin is out, unfortunately.
But Drouin was like, I know it's a while back now, Andrew, but Drouin was supposed to be that type of acquisition too, right? But it's always about like, oh, you got to be more consistent without the puck. So like, even if they do go out and get risk takers, like this regime, they're going to break you until you don't want to take as many risks anymore. You want to be sound without the puck. Like, it's great. I get it. I understand why you want guys that are, smart, that think the game real well on, 200 by 85 or whatever it is. But you also need guys at a certain point that are going to take a chance when you need them to. Guys who are going to rely on their skill, we're going to take a chance to make a play. And it's just like with this team, it's like if you have any bit of individual talent or skill or flair, like they're going to try to beat it out of you.
Yeah, they don't like it. And that's been going back a long time. I mean, look at the way that they developed Alex Galchenyuk, right? Or like any moment they were trying to give him more responsibility, it was like, no, don't do your thing, do our thing. The square peg into the round hole philosophy has been very evident in this organization. Before we move on to David Savard, which we have to talk about, we'll talk about Ben Chiarot as well. We'll do a segment on defenseman here, but I want to give a shout out to Robert Malloy, who's the mod on our streams and the SDPN social media manager. It's his birthday today. So shout out to Robert. Also, I keep on forgetting to say this on the show. I put it on social media, but if you download the new SDPN app, which is fantastic, you can actually watch the show on YouTube the next day, and you can do it on, how on your phone you can kind of shrink screens and use other apps at the same time? You can't do that with the YouTube app, but you can do that with YouTube videos for the whole SDPN network on the app. And also, Game Over now has a merch store, which you can check out, which has some pretty sick designs on it from, I think Jesse Blake designed them, because he's a multi-talented psycho who does everything for this network. So shout out to all that stuff, and happy birthday, Robert. So Ben Chiarot, we'll talk about him first, because I think we'll lead with the positive before we get into Savard.
Yeah.
Best game of his year, easily, I think. And I was talking to a friend of mine in DMs during the game, and he was talking about like, anytime Chiarot starts to go crazy offensively. You know, the defensive miscues start coming, and I was like, the defensive miscues are always there with Chiarot. So I actually prefer when he plays like he did tonight, where he's trying to pressure offensively, and like that goal was good. He just like willed it into the net. It was his third scoring chance of that sequence, I think. And one thing that I noticed with Chiarot is that when he drops the shoulder and drives the net, opposing teams freak the hell out because he is a monster, you know, and like you don't expect him to do it. And I think whenever he does that, he creates so much chaos. I wish he would do it all the time. I think Chiarot should lean into it and try to be an offensive defenseman because I think he's much better at it than he is at playing defense.
Wow, that is a hot take. I was not ready for that spicy take. I want to check the high danger chances, how they finished with Chiarot on the ice, because I think it was like 5-0 at one point in favor of the Canadiens with him. And I think Petrie was at 6-0. He finished at 8-5, which is, listen, it's still pretty respectable for Ben Chiarot. I don't know about, putting your head down and letting him, like, already he's got power play time, Andrew. Like, one more, like, how many goals you want this guy to finish with? Like, you want him to hit double digits this year or what? But
go for it, man. Somebody's got to replace Shea Weber, right?
Dude, only Mike Hoffman has more goals than Ben Chiarot this year on the Canadiens. But I do think he was pretty steady tonight. He was pretty stable. Like you said, like, the goal he scored, it wasn't right around the net, but it was still relatively close to the net. You want to take some chances. So I liked this game tonight. Like, I had no problem with Ben Chiarot tonight, and I'm hoping that slowly but surely, Jeff Petrie gets to where he needs to be, and then whether it's Edmondson who comes back and plays with him, or if Chiarot continues to play with him, like, I feel like whoever Petrie plays with, if he's at peak Petrie or close to peak Petrie, I feel like that guy who he's playing with is going to benefit. So hopefully it's those two guys, but I think they're going to go back to Edmondson whenever he's, another 10 days or whatever.
I would definitely assume so. And Petrie, it's tough to figure out what's going on there, but I do think he's getting better. Like, you can see the incline in his play, right? There's still some decision-making issues, especially on the power play. Like, one play stood out to me tonight where he kind of had like 3 guys open and he could have made like a safe play, but he tried to make what is really a relatively safe play down to Gallagher below the goal line, and the Kings just like read the pass really easily and deflected it into the corner. And I believe it ended up clearing the zone, but I don't know, man. I think Petrie, the biggest thing with him right now, I know he's not 100% healthy, but I think it's just the pressure, and that's starting to ease off a little bit. But when you enter a season, and I know that he's played really well when Weber's been on the IR before, but when you have the knowledge that like he's never coming back, and then Marc Bergevin does that press conference and he's like, yeah, I'm not making any trades. The answer's in the room. You're like, so I'm not getting any reinforcements. And like, so much of the Canadiens offense over the last several years has run through Jeff Petrie. And now there's nothing to release that pressure.
Yeah.
I feel like that does a number on your psyche.
Yeah, I guess so. And I think maybe it's a little different this time than it was in previous years, just because like you're coming off a Stanley Cup final, like no matter who you lose, like you're coming off a trip to the Stanley Cup final. And so you know that there's going to be a certain expectation that's going to be there coming into the season. Still, I don't know. I think there's got to be there's some upper body issue. I don't know if it's like hand, wrist, arm. I don't know what it is. Like even tonight, he received like a pretty clean pass in the slot, and he's just like fumbling around with the puck. Like I don't know. There's something there that seems to be hampering him. But even like you're right though, like injury aside, he just, I don't know, maybe trying to do too much. I'm not sure what it is, but I thought that finally on Saturday night, for the first time, like he was actually willing to shoot the puck. I know his shots tend to get blocked a lot this year, or they miss the net. But I felt like, I forget what Golden Knight it was that went down to block a shot, and like he really, like he was hurt, like he was shaken up after. Yeah, like he really felt it, and I felt like it was the first time all year that had happened, or the first time in a while anyway. So I'm with you. I think slowly but surely it's coming. But they need him to get involved in the offense because like they don't have anybody who can move the puck, man. Like it's him or bust.
Yeah, and like Weidman's been okay, but I think if you've got Chris Weidman running your first wave power play, like that's just not a good situation. And we know Petrie's capable of it. I do wonder if it's the fingers after getting caught in the camera hole last year. Like I remember when it happened, there was talk that he was going to need surgery, and I don't think he ever got surgery.
They never announced it if he did.
Yeah, it could be a situation where they were like, this is going to be fine, doesn't need it. And now it's like, not 100%. You know, like
Yeah.
anytime you got something that's throwing you off like that. I mean, look at Brendan Gallagher, right? How many times has his hand exploded now? Like,
Yeah, we're on a
talk
couple
about bad
times.
luck.
But he's another one. Like you can tell that with Gallagher, it's coming. I don't know if it's ever going to be all the way back to what it was because like it's just such a physically demanding style. So you can tell like never the greatest skater or anything like that, but he's still like he's a step off. He's a step slower than
Yep.
he was at his peak. But you can see like the desire is there. Like you talked about it after Pizzetta gets called on the penalty. Him, Athanasiou, and Lemieux, like they're all sitting on the bench and they're all just like chirping each other. And then like he drives right to the net, gets two great scoring chances, then gets high sticked in the face. So like he's willing, he wants to engage, he's trying to get the guys going, but I don't know that the body's gonna allow him to do that night in and night out this season. But those are two guys that they need.
Yeah, it's really unfortunate because I feel like Gallagher is also a guy who thrives on the competition, right? And if the Canadiens have nothing to play for, we're not going to see the best of Brendan Gallagher because he's not going to be like, I'm not saying this as an accusation of him not being fully involved. I think that for any athlete at this level to get to that like 100% that you need to be at your best, it has to be worth something. You know, it has to be something driving you beyond what you're normally capable of. And Gallagher is that almost every game, right? But I don't know if we've seen it on a consistent basis this season. Like his on-ice impact is still strong. He's still Brendan Gallagher, but he's not scoring goals. And that could come down to the hand issue holding it back. It could be just small sample size at the beginning of the season. And the fact is almost nobody's scoring goals for the Canadiens. But I wonder if it would be better long-term, since he's signed long-term for the Canadiens, if they plan on running with him that whole contract, sit him out a bit this season. I know you can't really right now because they're injured, but when the team is a bit healthier, let him have some rest. Do some of that, what do they call it? Load management, right?
Load management, yeah.
And I know hockey players hate it. And it would be, I'm sure Brendan Gallagher would be a tough guy to talk to and be like, we're sitting you out tonight. But at the same time, if you've got nothing to play for this year, if you're not going to make the playoffs, and they're not going to make the playoffs, let him rest a little bit. Let him heal up from the bumps and scrapes, because there can't be many people in the league get more banged up than Brendan Gallagher.
No, 100%. It's funny you mentioned that with Gallagher, because I was kind of going to say that with Petrie. Like, just at this point, like, I know things are ugly, and you believe, if you're, internally, you believe that you're going to get the season back on the rails and you can still make it happen. But like, what's the point? Like, if the guy's not right, like, just let him sit for a couple of weeks. And again, you're right with the load management, the hockey mentality is not the same as it is in basketball, but like, just, tell him, like, Jeff, sit down. They say they want to give Norlinder a shot or whatever when he's done this rehab assignment. I think tomorrow's the last one in Laval for him. So I don't know, man, like, just let these guys get to 100% health, and at the same time, give them a bit of rest. They don't have to go night in, night out. But Gallagher's one, Petrie's another one. Like, they're banged up right now, but man, I don't know. Like, just season's not going anywhere. But again, you know how hockey players think. They're not like, they think that they're going to rattle off like 10 in a row and get back into it.
Well, and I think especially a lot of the guys in that room probably think like that because last year, all year, they struggled with consistency, right? And they're like, but we just need a chance and we're going to figure it out. And then all of a sudden in the playoffs, they are unbeatable until the Stanley Cup final, right? And it's easy to get that delusion in your head that athletes kind of have to have, right? You can't be a pro athlete and not think that you're going to win every time, right? It's just, to get to that level, you have to have some level of self-delusion in your brain that you're like, I'm the best. Our team is the best. We're always going to win. I remember, like, I talked to Vincent Damphus years ago now for a project I did for the John Molson School of Business about how captaincy can affect performance, essentially. And we talked about him, like the responsibilities of a captain and how it can change the way that you play the game. And I was talking to him about later in his career, I think it was in like San Jose, when his point production just like went way down. And I was like, yeah, so like, what, as you age, what did you find like you lost? Like, did you find you lose a step in skating and that like cut down your ability to get off shots off the rush, or did your shot start to go, or were you like cumulative injuries? And he was like, no, they just gave me less power play time. And I was like, okay. I think you were like 35 and you probably started to slow down a little bit. No, just power play time. Like, okay, Okay, Vincent. So it's like I think you have to have some level of that, of like, I will never get worse. I will never fail to be a pro athlete. And I think that's admirable, but at the same time, you've got to, as the boss, as the coach, as the manager, you've got to manage those personalities as well. And if the
Yeah.
Canadians hope to be competitive in the next couple of years, I think it is very imperative that you make Petrie and Gallagher last as players instead of, redlining them in these lean years
Mhm.
and ruining the rest of their careers.
I'm with you. It's just I don't know. I don't know that we're gonna get to the point where hockey people think this way like this year, and that's why like as much as we can discuss this till we're blue in the face, I don't think it's gonna happen. Like I
Yeah.
think in March when you're in third to last place in the league, like I wouldn't be surprised if Jeff Petrie played like 27 minutes in a close game against Buffalo when it's like 40 below outside. You know what I mean? Like I just like they don't think of it that way. They think like, hey, game to game, we gotta win, we gotta win, we gotta win. And so I'm with you, but they just hockey mentality just doesn't allow for it for whatever reason.
Yeah, we'll get there maybe eventually, but it ain't coming soon.
Nope, not this
Yeah.
year.
So on to the negatives a little bit. David Savard. Man, I just wrote an article about David Savard for the Montreal Gazette talking about how he's been better than his like goals against have looked so far this season. Man, that guy's on the struggle bus hard though. Like I I look at him, and the first section of the season, I saw a guy who, like, every bad bounce you could possibly imagine is going against this guy. And
We
there's a
tweeted about it
certain
last week. You and
what?
I were tweeting. You and I were tweeting
Yeah.
about this last week. Like you couldn't catch a break.
Yeah, and like to a certain extent, the same is true of tonight. Like the Iafallo goal, Dvorak wins that face-off, and the puck placement is like just a bit too far ahead of Savard, right?
Yeah.
And Iafallo beats him there. But it's that moment's hesitation from Savard where he's like, should I go for the puck? Yes. And that's death, right? A guy against a guy who's faster than you and has a step on you, and he doesn't have to change direction, right? He's got to do the crossover. And I feel bad for him because I feel like normally he makes the safe play and he doesn't have that hesitation in his game. But what I worry for him now is that things have been going so wrong early on that despite the fact that his play hasn't been as bad as it looks, it's one of those situations where things go wrong for so long that you just get down on yourself and you're like, well, I got to do things differently. But the things
Yeah.
that you do differently are the wrong things. And then your season just goes completely into the crapper. And I think that's a very distinct possibility for David Savard.
I think so too. What was the game on Thursday night? Was that the Islander game on Thursday night?
Yes.
When they were really had a rough night. Him and Kulak. Like we went in on Friday, and there was people at the station, like people I respect, who think that I think it was our buddy Gallo mentioned like Carl Alsner never had a night as bad as David Savard had that night, and I mean that's debatable. It might be true, it might not be true, but I also don't think that Savard has played quite as bad. And listen, it's a really small sample size, but I don't have him in Alsner territory yet. Like I get the comparables with the contract, even the style of play, although Savard typically is a little meaner than Alsner, but they're both like those stay-at-home type of defensemen. But I don't think this sign, listen, I could be wrong, but I don't think this signing is going to get to be that bad. Like I don't think this is a guy whose play is going to deteriorate to the point where he's not going to be an NHLer anymore. Like I don't see that.
No, and I think like wasn't Savard paid significantly more as well? Like the cap was lower, and he was like 4.5 or something like that. Like they signed him to a pretty big contract, and Savard's only making 3.5.
Yeah.
And I think the biggest issue here is like they actually went. I think it was Dom Ducharme who went out and said like Savard's going to replace a lot of what Shea Weber brought. And I was like, why would you say that out loud? Like, what are you doing to this guy?
Yeah.
Like, it makes no sense. And for what Savard is, like, he is a very one-dimensional guy at this point in his career, right? He's a stopper, defensive guy, and when the goals are going in against him, he's not bringing any offense to the table, so it's like extra bad. And I feel for him because he probably didn't sign up to even be a top 4 guy, right? Like he wasn't a top 4 guy in Tampa Bay. That's why he was successful there.
Yeah. I see. I think like to me on paper, I was like in the playoffs, Tampa Bay, and obviously Tampa Bay, Montreal, like you can't even compare. But it was him and Sergachev on the third pairing, and it was just kind of steady. And obviously Sergachev has a lot to do with that too. But
Of course, yeah.
I honestly thought that like him and Romanov, like to give Romanov somebody safe and steady, like I thought that he can be his flamboyant or a little more flamboyant self. And that, I mean, that hasn't worked out either. Like, I don't think Kulak Savard is working out,
No,
but
not
it's
at all.
like, what are you gonna do with this guy? Like, where are you gonna put him? I don't know. Like, I liked Sami Niku at times, but I don't know. Like, I think they assume that they would be able to play David Savard with like a Norlander or a Romanov, like somebody who might be a bit lost and stuck in the defensive, in their defensive end at some points. And it hasn't worked out that way. No matter who they've put him with, it's been a struggle because again, he's another one of these guys that he's miscast. Like we were talking about Evans before and we were saying he's a 4C. Well, David Savard should not be your number 2 right-handed defenseman if you have playoff aspirations at the very least. So I mean, I still like him. I don't think this is a catastrophe of a signing just yet, but you're right. Like if the fans start turning on him and if things start spiraling out of control at home, especially in your home province, like maybe it gets away from him, but I don't think we're there yet.
No, we're not there yet, but I think you can kind of read the weight of things on his shoulders right now, like every play.
Yeah.
And the foot speed is an issue, especially with how bad this team bleeds rush chances against, right? And that's what's making him look worse right now, right? Because he's not an amazing rush defender. He plays with a short stick. He's not super fast. He's solid positionally, but he kind of keeps like a loose gap.
Yeah.
And with that situation, with the forwards that aren't coming back to apply pressure and kind of help alleviate things, like he just gets exposed over and over and over again. And like, yeah, he looks bad. And he is bad at that. Like that's not his bread and butter. His thing is killing guys on the cycle, like killing plays on the cycle, beating them up on the forecheck.
Yeah.
He's going to be able to stop those kinds of plays, killing penalties. His penalty killing actually so far this year, super solid. It's the Chiarot Petrie pairing that's been really rough on the penalty kill. So he's doing his job on the PK, but at even strength, the way that they're giving up chances is really detrimental to the style of player he is. And like we've talked about this before, the Canadiens just have too many of the same guy on D, and until they remedy that, I don't see things necessarily improving.
Yeah. So basically what you're saying is what we've established here through the first few minutes of the podcast is that they need more quality depth down the middle, more centers, and they need more puck moving defensemen. So other than that,
yes,
like other than
easiest things to get,
other than another top 2 line center and 2 top 4 defensemen who could move the puck, like they're good. They're good other than that. But yeah. I'm with you.
I mean, the thing is, like, I was talking to a couple friends about like what the Canadiens should do, and they were like, "Oh, should they do a full scale tear down?" I'm like, I don't think they need that. Like, if you get into a situation where you're like, should we trade Tyler Toffoli? No. Like, yes, you'll get great value for him because he's on a fantastic contract, but I think that they within his contract window can get into a competitive window. Cole Caulfield is gonna break out here eventually. Give him time in the American Hockey League. But they do need, like, they have that trio of high-end defensive prospects, right? Norlander, Harris, and Struble.
Yeah.
And they're unfortunately in a situation where I think all 3 need to hit. And they need one of them to be a star. Right? And that's
100%.
Not even accounting for if Jeff Petrie starts to decline. Because he's in his mid-30-ish range now. So, like...
this is year 1 of a 4-year deal. So you paid him, you bought him, you keep him. So you have to hope that he doesn't slow down. You're banking on that, at least in the first half of this deal. And I'm with you. Like you're not going to go out and get, unless they again draft high and they get somebody. They fall into like a Quinn Hughes type of thing, and you get somebody who can come in and do, or Cale Makar, or whoever. But unless you get somebody who can come in and help right away, like I don't know. Like, I don't know how you feel about them. And I obviously haven't seen them play live a ton, but I don't know that any of those guys is going to be a star. Like, they just might be really good players.
Yeah.
But man, they need somebody who's going to be that big minute defenseman who can play, like they need their version of Heiskanen or, whatever. The list goes on and on, Makar or whatever. But I don't know how you get that. Like I don't know. Like they've drafted in the top 5 before, and they haven't come away. Like they don't have anything to show for it. So I don't know. It's kind of tough to bank on anything.
Yeah, I mean, I guess you could say like if they were to get Shane Wright this year, which is a low chance, it fixes a lot of
It's a
problems,
big
right?
hole, yeah,
But
obviously.
again, that's you're banking on a chance, and that's why I think that they kind of need to bottom out for a couple years in a row and bank some picks. And
Yeah.
it's a rough situation because you've got to talk to Carey Price, who's going to be coming back relatively soon, and say like we're going to waste a year of your career again. We're going to probably 2. Same with Brendan Gallagher, Jeff Petrie, guys who are not necessarily in the back 9 for Gallagher, but they're not going to be in their prime by the time the Canadiens come out of this. So it's tough conversations to have. And like what I said when I had Chris Curtis on a couple, I guess it was on Halloween. I talked about like if I was the GM, what would be the first thing that I would do? And I would sit those veterans down and say like, do you want to stick it out?
Yeah.
Because you have to give them the respect of like if they don't want to do that for not the end of the career for Gallagher, but for the other guys, like the rest of their career pretty much, or at least when they're impact players, you got to give them a respect to if they want out, give them an option to do that. I think Price is a very difficult thing to move, right?
Yeah.
But I think Carey Price probably doesn't want out anyway. His family's here and he's been here his whole career.
Yeah.
He's the guy that if you're gonna tear it down, you still keep as like the leader for the next gen, and you absorb the cap hit because it doesn't matter because you're bottoming out anyway. And I think he provides some stability to the organization as well.
What you need, right? But I'm with you. Like we agree. I wouldn't tear this thing down. Like I wouldn't rip this up to shreds. Like I think you have some pieces. Like Nick Suzuki is a really nice starting point. Like I don't know how you feel about Romanov. I know there's some people who thought he was like a top pairing guy. Like I think he's more of a potential, that top 4 guy eventually.
I think he's like third pair at best, honestly.
You think so? Really?
Yeah, I'm not seeing it. I thought today he had a really good game actually. That big hit
since he's back, since he was healthy scratch. Like I think he's been a lot better already.
Yeah, I don't see the upside with him as the issue because I don't think he's a very good defender and he doesn't bring much offensively either. So not really good in transition. So I'm like, where are we getting the upshot for all the bad reads that he makes and the adventurous play? You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think he's a guy, like you saw it early. Like I think it was opening night last year where I don't know if you remember, like this is super specific, but like he walked the blue line like in Toronto on Mitch Marner, like in the first period. It was like one of his first shifts in the NHL, and he made like a nifty move to get it on Marner. And I was like, well, okay, like this guy's got flair, he's got poise. And then they kind of beat it out of him. And I get it that you need your defenseman to be reliable, but okay, so we'll disagree on that one. I think he has top 4 upside, but I think you have enough pieces. Like Caulfield is another one. Like I think you have enough pieces that you don't have to tear down from scratch. And like Toffoli's still in his prime. Anderson, I think he just kind of is what he is. But you have some pieces there to build it on. So you don't have to go full Buffalo, I don't think, but you do, because the problem with finishing poorly 1 year out of every so often is like you could fall on drafts that are just not good.
You mean like the Canadiens have done twice now?
Like the Kotkaniemi draft, like the first 2 picks, I'd love to have Dahlin. I'd love to have Svechnikov, Brady Tkachuk is a different story, but like it's not the greatest, it wasn't the greatest of situations there either. Like you could have had Quinn Hughes too, but I get it, but it wasn't a terrible draft. But yeah, I think if you finish last, like you said, 2 to 3 years in a row, then you're bound to find your version of Austin Matthews or whoever that is. Like you're bound to hit on somebody if you pick 3 years in a row, if you pick in the top 5 or whatever. So I don't think it's the full rebuild. I think you have enough nice pieces that you can just kind of take a step back organically.
Absolutely. And I feel like that's one of the other things with this organization. Like if you're going to do that, I think you need to change up the management structure completely because they just haven't drafted and developed well for way too long of a time now to be trusted to actually rebuild the team. And I think, maybe the draft record shows up a lot differently if like Norlinder, Struble, Harris, if Cole Caulfield becomes a star. Like if that ends up happening, it kind of changes the narrative a little bit on Bergevin's tenure as like in terms of drafting and developing, but like we're still 9 years in.
Yeah.
You know, like it's been
Well,
a long time, and they've
I
bottomed
think
out 3 times now, and they have none of those first round picks, right?
yeah.
Sergachev, they traded for Drouin, which I mean, we could argue about that trade all day long. Sergachev's a really nice player. I still don't think it's as big of a loss as people seem to be convinced of because he's played mostly third pair his entire NHL career. But Galchenyuk gone. Obviously, Kokoniemi gone this summer, and getting Dvorak for the pick that they got for Kokoniemi, that's decent value. But again, we're not super impressed with Dvorak yet either. He's been better than Kokoniemi, but like they
Well,
didn't
hold
really
on
trust
though.
him anyway.
You're
So
you're saying decent value. Like if the Canadians like string together a stretch in March and finish outside the top 10,
yeah,
like
then it's bad
if
value.
I have to give like the 11th, 12th, 13th overall pick for Christian Dvorak, I feel a lot differently about that deal. Like if they end up getting the Carolina pick and they pick like 25 and later, like I'm okay, I'm fine, I'm okay with that. But yeah, I don't know if the Canadians are going on a run that long that takes them out of the top 10 or out of the top 10 draft selections at this point. But yeah, like that can get messy if they start to win down the stretch.
Yeah, it really could. That would be the ultimate kick in the pants if Carey Price
Oh,
comes back and just like
oh,
pulls them right out of it,
that would be nasty.
Yeah, we've mentioned it a few times on the show. Just like that would be the most Habs thing to happen is that Price comes back and he's like, "I'm gonna win myself a Hart Trophy."
Yeah, no, you can't. But look, I think in terms of like we're saying, like I think they're in a decent spot, but you're missing the high end talent. And in terms of the draft and developing thing, like again, it's going to be something weird to say because they just went to a Stanley Cup final. But even if all those guys that you mentioned end up hitting, like you failed to draft and develop for so long before those guys that it ended up catching up to you. Because like,
Yes.
let's not get it twisted. Arizona's bad. They're terrible, but they knew they were going to be terrible. The Canadians did not think they were going to be terrible this year. The Blackhawks didn't either, but the Canadians in the Eastern Conference thought that they'd compete for a playoff spot. So it's problematic that you've looked as bad as you have when you're trying to compete this year.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you look at what the Carolina or not the Carolina Hurricanes, the Arizona Coyotes stockpiled in terms of draft picks. Like they knew they were going to be bad. This is a make or break year for that organization. I think they have something like 3 or 4 first round picks and 5 second round picks. If
Yeah.
you go on like Cap Friendly, I've never seen the picks have to be stacked on their little graphics.
Yeah.
They have so many picks in the first 2 rounds. I've never seen anything like it. So they knew what they were doing. Canadians definitely not so much, and trading that first round pick could definitely haunt them. But
But
I think
to your point, sorry to cut you off, but
no
to your
worries.
point, like, isn't this the perfect time to like go away from this regime? Like, it's kind of all
Yes,
falling into place for you, right? Like, the GM's out of contract, and he can, if he's gone and goes somewhere else, he can take everybody, all his close guys, he can take them with him, and you can literally start from scratch with new people.
yeah, and I think the main takeaway for that is like they need to do that soon. And I understand that it might be a difficult decision to move on from your long-term general manager and a lot of the management team, but like you have to give the next guy the ability to assess in season where you're involved with the players, where you can talk to people in the organization and figure out like what needs to actually happen. You have to let them establish their own scouting staff. Maybe like, it might not even be scouting staff. It might be directives to the scouting staff, and head into the trade deadline with the right direction, head into the draft having assessed the organization fully and what you want to do. Don't just hire a guy around the same time as you did with Marc Bergevin, which was like right before the draft, and then you're flying by the seat of your pants. You
Yeah.
have the old regime making picks, and then the next season, the new GM is crying publicly about like he wanted a different player in the draft, which is like you want to talk about how badly they handled Alex Galchenyuk. As a rookie, Marc Bergevin's out there saying, "Oh, I would have taken Morgan Riley." Like, get out of here, man. Like, even if it's true, you don't say that while the guy's still in your organization. Just like that's just awful, man. So I think you gotta cut the cord, do the painful thing right away, and then think about the future. Because the longer they wait, the tougher it's gonna be for the next guy. I shouldn't
Yeah,
even say
but
guy, next person.
yeah, but how often does it happen where a team will get permission to bring on a GM who's working for somebody else in season. Like, I feel like it doesn't really happen that often in hockey. Like, maybe there's special circumstances. I don't know if you have to give a draft pick in that case if you're promoting the guy or whatever, but it doesn't typically happen in season with a GM. Like, it's very, very rare.
Yeah, it does seem pretty rare. I think it depends on if they're like how high up they are, I guess. I know I've seen a lot of people talking about Matthew Darsh. He's a guy that I'd be very interested in. But what I talked about on the last show was that we talk so much about, you know, the francophone thing being a limitation on like who you can hire, right? But the biggest limitation for a general manager is a hockey man. That's what your limiting factor, right? Go outside of the hockey man. Find the best manager. He or she can surround themselves with hockey people, right? It doesn't matter if the manager knows really anything about hockey. Their job is to be a manager, manage the company. I think, look at Julien Brisebois. Before he started out, like, you can take somebody who's come up the ranks, whatever, but like, he's not a high-end hockey guy. Not before he started as a general manager in the AHL. Like, he just learned the ropes on the fly, and he's a brilliant dude. And now he's probably the best general manager in the league, in competition with like his former boss, Steve Yzerman.
Yeah. Well, look, I think in fairness, and like, it's not fair to say that he inherited Stanley Cup winner. He did, but he was
there longer than Yzerman, right? Like, he started building that team before.
For sure. So, and he also made some moves after Yzerman left that helped them, cement that their back-to-back Stanley Cup title. But I don't know, like, I think in this market, man, I think it's a different beast in the sense that you need somebody who kind of has that Bergevin personality that, I'm going to make the decision hockey-wise, and I'm going to live with it. You could surround yourself with great hockey people, but you need somebody who's, I don't know, you need somebody who's built a little different. You need somebody who's going to be bold in the hockey sense. So I don't know, like, you can surround yourself with whoever, but I'm real fascinated to see. And I do understand, like, I'm not one of those Anglos that's going to sit here and tell you like, oh yeah, I think that hiring a French guy is stupid. Like, no, I get it, but there's no doubt that it needs to be done, but there are limitations. Like, you're like, I find it's hard enough to find competent hockey people who fit a vision and who are going to be able to execute flawlessly at a high enough level to make you competitive year in and year out. And when you're kind of shrinking the talent pool, like, you really need to do your due diligence. You really need to turn over every rock, every stone, and you need to make sure that you get it right. So in a way, like, I get why they have to do this, but it makes the selection process that much more important because you don't have the amount of candidates that everybody else has.
Yeah, and that's why I think they have to open it to outside of the traditional hockey people, right? And you can also buffer that by hiring somebody to be the team president, right? Like, why is Jeff Molson president of hockey operations?
Yeah, that would help. Like, your favorite team, the Maple Leafs, do it. So why can't
my favorite team? Shots fired.
Why can't the Canadiens do it too? No, but something I would, again, like you said, this is a great opportunity to start fresh. And for Jeff Molson, like, you can be the owner, but let's do something different here than what you've done in years past. Like, you had a trip to the conference final where if your goalie doesn't get hurt, maybe you go to the Stanley Cup final. And then you had another trip to the Stanley Cup final where they mopped the floor with you last year in the final. But so you had like some successes, but now that this tenure is over, or it seems over, go in a different direction, try to think a little bit outside the box, like you're saying, but do things differently. Hire a president of hockey ops, go after the general manager, whoever you want, but try to do things a little bit differently and see if the results, maybe the results are better. Maybe they're not, but maybe they are.
Yeah. I mean, if anybody has the financial capacity to do something differently, it's the Montreal Canadiens, right? It's like them, the Maple Leafs, the Rangers. The Rangers aren't doing anything differently. The Maple Leafs are a little bit differently structured than most teams. I think the Montreal Canadiens have to do a big job of catching up to the way things are done in the modern NHL. They're way too traditional compared to the teams that are actually successful nowadays. And hey, it's never too late to start. You can always get ahead. If you've got money and a good plan, you can get ahead, especially in this league. This league, almost everybody in a GM position is a former NHL player. You telling me, like, The only people who know hockey are former NHL players.
No. I
The
don't
only
think
people
so.
who are good managers are former NHL players. Look at every other major sport. That's not the way it is. So get ahead, do something creative, and give us something fun to watch on the ice, because it hasn't been that fun to watch this year.
I wonder, and you tell me what you think, but I wonder if Jeff Molson, I mean, listen, they just went to the final with that old school mentality, the big bruising defenseman, play that tight defensive style, good penalty killing, timely scoring, a good, good goaltending. I wonder if that doesn't impact their decision, and I wonder if they don't say to themselves like, hey, well, we had this type of success the old school way, maybe we go back to that. I don't know.
I mean, based on their moves in the summer, they definitely thought that, right?
Yeah,
But the beginning of this season should be killing that feeling.
You'd think.
It should be dead in the water. And I think they should really look at the forest for the trees and say, like, if it weren't for COVID, they wouldn't have made the playoffs the last 2 years either. So that playoff success, while nice and something to point to, doesn't exist for this team. Like, we are now, the way things are trending, if it weren't for COVID, I believe we'd be in the midst of like a 5th year in a row missing the playoffs.
Yeah.
Which has never happened for this organization. So it's
like,
ironic that like they had the best playoffs since '93, but the last 5 years have probably been the worst stretch of regular seasons in the history of the franchise.
Yeah. I mean, in fairness, last year, I mean, the schedule down the stretch after the COVID, like after they went on pause, was like ridiculous. And I think they would have only narrowly missed out on a playoff spot if it was a normal year. So if it's a balanced schedule, who knows? Like maybe they get in. But yeah, you're right. I mean, they wouldn't have made the playoffs. They wouldn't have upset Pittsburgh in the bubble in Toronto. They don't get by the Leafs if it's not a Canadian division. So from that perspective, yeah, man, I guess you're right. But I don't know. I'll believe the outside the box thinking and hirings when I see them.
Yeah, I don't expect it. I mean, I think this organization will have to be dragged kicking and screaming into the future. But on that point, we'll shut her down for the evening. Thanks so much, Joey, for coming on. I really appreciate it, and I'm excited to have you on again. Hopefully for a game that's a little bit more exciting. They had some exciting moments in the third period there. That Jake Evans goal was absolutely sick, but maybe the Canadiens could score more than 2 for once. That'd be nice.
Yeah, maybe. I really look forward to doing it again, man. I appreciate you having me on, and let's hopefully get some more exciting games going. That would be nice.
My pleasure, man. Before I let you go, tell everybody where they can find you and what you're up to this season.
Yeah, man. So I'm on TSN 690 radio here in Montreal every day, 3 to 7. I'm part of Mitch Melnick's crew, I guess, and we talk mostly hockey. We do talk a little football, a little soccer, NBA, and all that stuff too. But most of our coverage is focused on the NHL and the Montreal Canadiens. So 3 to 7, Monday to Friday on 690.
You heard it right here. Go check them out, everybody.